For most of the past decade, census numbers show that Illinois continues to shrink, and the number of people fleeing the state of Illinois continues to increase, according to the annual estimates from the U.S. Census data. It's not just the U.S. Census data. You've got private numbers from U-Haul, United Van Lines. You've got other government data from the IRS, all indicating Illinois is losing population. Despite all of that, Governor J.B. Pritzker and even Illinois' congressional delegation not believing those numbers and saying that the U.S. Census needs to change their way of calculating these numbers. Well, it's not just the overall national population that the census releases. It's not just the state-by-state population census releases. They also release the population changes about counties. They release the population changes about cities. Well, the most recent data deals with how many people are leaving a state and going to another, or how many people are going to a particular state. And Ted Dabrowski with Wirepoints has that data. He's digested that data. He joins us now to talk about this. Ted, let's get right on into it. What's the latest you guys have found there at Wirepoints?
The U.S. Census confirms we're losing people, and this is the, as you said, state-to-state movements. And when you add up all the people that move into Illinois in a given year and the people who move out in a given year to other states, we lost a net 146,000 people in 1 year. That's the third biggest loss in the country. Only California and New York did worse. And what's really damning about the whole thing is it's not just sunny Florida or maybe Arizona that we lose our people to. We're big net losers to Indiana, to Wisconsin, to Missouri, to Iowa. We lose to every single one on a net basis, in and out, to every single one of our neighbors. So it's a really damning number. We can't keep our people, and that's a big problem.
Ted, when the governor's asked about this, he always points to some survey results that the census put out after the 2020 count and says, hey, they miscalculated. Where's he wrong on that?
Well, we spoke to the census after they came out with that. They said that based on a tiny sample after the census was done, they said that they see some errors. But they said they can't extrapolate that error to the whole count. So they haven't changed the count. But Pritzker likes to grab onto that thing, keep repeating it, ignoring that the IRS data says the exact same thing the census data says. The U.S. Van Lines, the U-Haul, all those things keep pointing in the same direction. But Pritzker's trying to hide behind that one error term that they talk about, which they say there's an error, but they won't and can't change the numbers because that error doesn't apply to the full census count.
Well, and it's interesting too because as I mentioned, you've got the state population counts, and then they drill it down to county population counts, and then they drill it down to large city population counts. These are all kind of like independent verifications of the overall census trends. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, no, I think it is safe to say, and I think the biggest problem with this population loss is, of course, all the policies that are chasing people away, and we can blame some of that on tax, some of that on crime, some of that on the corruption culture we have. We can blame it on a little bit of everything. But my biggest beef with the whole thing is, you can't fix a problem until you acknowledge it, and Governor Pritzker will not acknowledge the problem. He hides behind it, and that's what's wrong for Illinois.
Looking at some of the graphics you have at wirepoints.org for this story, it shows Illinois with arrows pointing out to all of the neighboring states. So we're losing population to all of these neighboring states in addition to Florida taking a whole bunch of Illinoisans?
That's right. So, to Indiana, for example, let's start with Florida. Florida, of course, is the biggest net destination. When you count the ins and outs between Florida and Illinois, Florida gained 24,000 net residents from Illinois. Indiana gained 19,000 from Illinois. Wisconsin gained 17, and Missouri gained 15,000. So those are big numbers that we're losing. Those are taxpayers. Those are people who can contribute to the economy, create jobs, et cetera. They're gone.
Ted, we had some gain from some states. I guess that's kind of good news. What do we know about the states where we actually saw people move from to live in Illinois?
Yeah, so we lost on a net basis to 40 states. So we're net losers to them. And we mentioned the big ones. We gained from 9. Net, we gained from 9. But the numbers that we gained were very small. And so, and it includes places like maybe New Jersey and Connecticut. Those are tough places to live, and maybe they thought Illinois might be a little better. I don't know. But the numbers were small. The net gains were small, not enough to offset at all the huge losses we had. And that's how we ended up with a net 146,000 loss in people leaving this state.
Ted Dabrowski joins us. He is the president of Wirepoints and talking about the latest population decline data from the U.S. Census and what's really driving this. What's the main factors you see of people leaving the state of Illinois?
People like to blame taxes, and I argue that people don't mind paying high taxes if they're getting really good services, right? Or they won't. But the problem in Illinois is we're paying the first or second highest property taxes in the country, and yet our services are not good. In many cases, they're bad. So taxes is one. I think the job opportunities. When you have a shrinking state, one with a lot of pension debt, a lot of debts, a bad credit rating, companies will be more cautious about investing here. They'd rather invest in Tennessee, in Texas, and Florida, even Indiana, where things are growing. Why invest in a shrinking state? So I think opportunities is another big factor. Start adding crime to that. Chicago crime has got to scare people away. We don't have good numbers on that, but you got to think that crime is a big factor. And then add the COVID restrictions for the 3 years. That certainly pushed a lot of people out of the state.
Ted Dabrowski, president of Wirepoints. Of course, people can find more of your work at wirepoints.org. I just want to touch on some of the education numbers you've been able to continue reporting on. Chicago doesn't look that great. Decatur as well has had some issues. Encapsulate some of those numbers and how we're faring with Illinois' education, especially since we've been putting even more money year after year after year into K through 12 education. Is that working?
Yeah. And Greg, you're right. I didn't mention education in one of the reasons people leaving, but our education is dismal, and the numbers bear that out. And across the state, what we found straight from the Illinois State Report Card and ISB is only 1 out of 10 across the entire state. 1 out of every 10 black kids can read at grade level, just 1 out of 10. For Hispanics, it's closer to 2 out of 10. And overall, across the entire state, it's just 3 out of 10 kids can read at grade level. So it's dismal. And again, we're not recognizing the problem. We're not obsessing about literacy. We should be doing much more. And it gets even worse when you move into places like Decatur, where the numbers are, like third grade black kids. It's 2 out of 100 kids can read at grade level. So it's beyond dismal. And I don't see enough pain and people talking about this. Governor Pritzker should be in Decatur fighting that issue right now.
And Ted, something else you guys have recently published at wirepoints.org is the latest crime statistics reviewing new Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson's first month in office. Tell us about the 38% jump in crime that you guys have discovered.
Yeah, so if you measure, this is straight from the Chicago CompStat data. If you look at crimes in Brandon Johnson's first month and you compare them to the same month a year ago, like for like, crimes are up 38%, and it's across the board. There were 3 fewer deaths in that month compared to a year ago, so that's the good news. But that's those are sadly rounding errors within Chicago's homicide numbers. But all the crimes, every single big major crime item was up, and so it's too early, I think, to blame Johnson, or I'll let people decide whether they want to blame him or not. But he hasn't taken any actions to tamp down on crime. He said a lot of things, I think, that might incite more crime. So the jury's out, but he's been there a month, and I think people are watching to see what he's going to do. So far, he's taken no concrete actions yet to tamp down on crime immediately.
Wirepoints President Ted Dabrowski, greatly appreciate your expertise always. It's a lot of data you guys crunch, but you're able to do it in a way that gets people to understand what the numbers mean. So thank you for taking time with us, and we'll talk again in the near future, all right?
Thank you, Greg.
It is Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's news and